Over the last few years, a lot of farmers around the country have had more weed problems than they've had to deal with in decades. So it's a big concern for everyone, and people are asking us, should I be spraying out in my corn and soybean fields in the fall to control weeds? That's what we want to talk about today.
Well, whenever we're looking at weed control options, it's nice to use contact killers, but I like to use residual products so I'm not right back out there spraying again. And you may say, well, it's not going to be that long and we're going to freeze and we're going to have snow where we farm. Okay, I get that. That's fine. But many weeds can get started really early in the spring before you're out in the field or when the field's too wet and muddy to be out there. So having a residual product now is going to last you well into the spring if you choose the right product.
But here's the whole thing. If you're going to spray a herbicide in the fall, just understand, yep, you can kill some weeds now, you'll kill some weeds early in the spring. To think that you're going to kill weeds late in the spring or all the way into the summer, it really depends on what you're using and how long that residual is. If you're going to spray a product in the fall, we want to spray it pretty late in the season, right before the ground is freezing up. And then in the spring, we want to be able to plant the crop as quickly as we can so we get crop canopy as fast as possible, knowing that, hey, my residual is going to end up running out on me. The other key tip here is don't put a fall residual herbicide where you might flood out next spring. You've got to know what crop you're going to plant, especially if you're using crop-sensitive products. So yeah, there are certain products like Dual, for example. You can use Dual in corn, you can also use Dual in soybeans, so that's no big deal. But let's say you use a product that's only labeled for corn, well, you better make sure you're going to be able to plant corn in the spring. But the other side of it is just environmentally, we don't want to have ground that's flooded out and then that chemical washes away.
Let's talk about some specific weeds. Now I can see when I've got mare's tail, when I've got dandelion, yeah, there's a number of weeds that I'd be after in the fall. But why on earth would we talk about pigweed in the fall, Brad? Why would he put a residual out there if we have a pigweed problem?
I'll tell you exactly why we would talk about this, because everybody's around the country is fighting pigweed species, and a lot of times it happens early in the spring. Ideally, the point of putting a fall residual herbicide out is we're going to kill some stuff that will germinate in the fall. So yes, I'm all for, hey, let's kill our mare's tail, let's kill our dandelions. We talked about that last week. Go with a high rate of Banville or 2,4-D, and you can throw that in with your residual herbicide. I'm great with that. But when we talk about pigweed control, we got a lot of people out there who are interested in, hey, I'm willing to invest more money in better pigweed control. What can I do already starting in the fall, and what's my whole program throughout the year? So a lot of companies, I don't care if it's Valent talking about Valor, FMC talking about Authority, you go over to the corn herbicides, people are talking even Dual, Harness, Outlook, Surpass. There are a lot of products out there that can be used in the fall that all have activity on pigweed. And the point is, we want to have good control in the fall, in the early spring, in the late spring, season long. So this is part of the whole program. It's not the total answer, but it's part of the program. That's why we got to talk about it today.
All right, well, when we're talking about these residual herbicides too, the other question that we get is, can it be done with fertilizer? Absolutely it can, especially with liquid fertilizer. However, impregnating on dry fertilizer definitely has some drawbacks.
Yeah, and the biggest drawback is you just don't have good spray coverage. When you start talking about pellets of fertilizer out there, you're not covering the ground like if you were to spray a liquid. So we absolutely do not recommend that you impregnate this on fertilizer. It's not going to work to the same level.
The other thing that we think about, depending on what your carrier is, whether it's water or fertilizer or whatever, is what do you need for spray coverage? What tips do you use? How many gallons of carrier do you need to get a good spread out in your field?
Well, the nice thing here is it's fall. Everything else is dead pretty much, so you don't have to worry as much about vapor drift. I'd run with flat fan nozzles. I'd cut your water volume a little bit, and I'd go hit it hard with a good strong rate of a residual herbicide. And again, I'd probably throw in either Banville or 2,4-D depending on what you're going to rotate to.
So depending on where you're at in the country, timing is really kind of a big deal too.
If I'm talking a fall Dual, a fall Prowl, a fall Treflan, or any of these types of things, I want to spray as late as possible. And the reason why is so I get the longest residual come spring. So you have to make a dedicated effort to say, I'm absolutely going to do this treatment if it's something you want to do. And you might even have to stop the combines for a day, you might have to stop fall tillage for a day, whatever it is, but you've got to make this a priority if weed control is what you're after. Well, once again, we are getting a lot of questions about fall residual herbicides. You absolutely can put most herbicides on in the fall. Just understand that you're going to probably want to bump the rate a little bit, but don't worry too much about the cost, because remember, you can buy almost all these products cheaper in the fall than you can in the spring anyway. So use a good strong rate, make sure you're spraying it late in the season, and then you want to make sure that you're doing this on ground that you know you're going to be able to plant early in the spring. You do all that, pick the right products, and you should have better weed control than you've ever experienced early in the spring. Then the question is, how quick can you get that crop up and canopied so you control the weeds the rest of the season?
Well, that's great advice in corn and soybean fields, but our weed of the week sometimes pops up in unusual places. We'll show you how to control this tough weed coming up next.